Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the show that actually managed to surprise itself tonight by what we've got going on. Another episode of Dad's Turn to Talk. My name is Derek. Welcome again. Folks, we're going to do something a little bit different this evening. They say variety is the spice of life, so let's get spicy, shall we? Allow me to introduce our two first constant characters here, the regular hooligans. Let's start off, of course, with the man who, they say, folks, there's some stuff in life where if you do it too much, you could go blind, or you could just come down with a case of Josh. Hello, Josh.
Wow. Oh, you're so sweet. I love you, Derek. Oh, God. Don't I pull through? Look at that. I got Dave on the show. I've had other celebrities. I should get an award for this.
Shut up!
For that, let's start off that way. That's right.
Love you too, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a really cool show tonight. Very excited to have Dave on.
Absolutely.
All right. And with that, let's introduce our other co-host here who just can't wait to start his vegan diet. The one and only Bob, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm getting real close to that vegan diet. In fact, I've already ordered my hot dogs for the theater tomorrow. But I'm going to lie to myself and tell myself that they're vegan hot dogs. So that way
That's
I'll
right.
feel better about myself.
You'll feel
But
healthier just by saying it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
But no, doing good, man. Good to be here. Looking forward to talking with our guests tonight, and glad everybody's doing well.
Yep. And I think we're going to like it. Speaking of like, folks, don't be afraid to like this show. That's right. Hit that thumbs up. Go ahead and get some extra credit while you're at it. Go ahead and hit subscribe just on the right there. Not too far away. With that, let's introduce our guests for the evening. We are turning this into an interview format for the night, folks, and we couldn't be more thrilled with our guest. I hope I do this justice. He has been an art director for such wonderful movies. This isn't your whole it's not your whole history here, sir, but I'm going to give some of the highlights here. Penguins of Madagascar, The First Trolls, my personal favorite, the Lego Batman movie. I could go, I'm sure we're going to get into that. I won't go into that right now. Sam is first director for the Loud House movie back in 2021. And I'm sure we're going to get into this very soon. He has a new one coming out, folks. It is Plankton the movie. You can catch that on Netflix coming out March 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Dave Needham. Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks
you
for coming on.
joining us, sir. So, Dave, I'm going to take a guess. I don't think you're from LA. Call me crazy.
No, I'm British. I moved to the States in I think 2011, and
Awesome.
I've been working in animation since the very end of the 90s. And I started off in London. I worked on Gorillas before it was even known, just in Jamie's studio with about 5 people, and worked on Mr. Bean. Worked on
Really?
Cartoon Network stuff like Gumball, and we had an animation studio in Soho for a few years, and then recently I've been working in features, mostly storyboarding and then head of story, and then I got the chance to direct, like you said, the Loud House movie a few years ago, and now Plankton, and so I'm in SpongeBob world, and it's a fun place to be.
Oh, God, where are my boys? We're going to make their night with this. So tell us a little bit about how you got into animation, just your start, because you made a heck of a trip across the pond in order to end up where you are. So curious to just hear about your start and your background.
I mean, just as a kid, you grew up watching Disney movies, and then a little bit later you start reading comics, and I loved Spider-Man, and I wanted to draw Spider-Man and Wolverine for a long time. And then I got into Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, my.
At the same time, I started making my own comics with some friends, and a few of us, we would self-publish these things and mail them off to different creators whose work we liked. And through that, we got to know Bill Ray, who is a background artist on Ren and Stimpy, who sort of advised, well, you could make comics for the rest of your life, but you'll just spend the rest of your life in your bedroom, or you could work in animation and you work in the studio and you spend all day trying to make each other laugh. And I think for us then, the penny sort of dropped, and we're like, yeah, that sounds like the thing to do. So, naively, I saved up a last student loan and came over to the States trying to get a job. And I loved it. I loved being, it was the first time in LA. And, you're staying in Hollywood. Normally when you do that trip for the first time, you don't know where you're going. And the city's so big, you need a car and all this stuff. I think I stayed at the Banana Bungalows, which was probably the cheapest place in LA. But me and my friend Chris, we just hung out, got to meet a lot of people, and went back to the UK just sort of inspired to try and just forge our way into a career in animation.
Nice.
Awesome. That's awesome.
I'm looking here at your IMDb, and obviously you've been involved in some projects. From Trolls to the Lego Batman movie, The Boss Baby. I see that you got credit on the Fairly Odd Parents, and of course, you directed the Loud House movie, which I actually just watched today. I wanted to familiarize myself with your work that you've done. Of all of these projects that you've done, is there any that kind of stand out to you as kind of being maybe one of your favorites that you worked on, or just for whatever reason the experience really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I learned a lot on Boss Baby and Trolls at DreamWorks. Directors Mike Mitchell and Tom McGrath are fantastic, and you'd learn something every time they'd come in a room, and that definitely stood out. And DreamWorks at the time, it just felt like such a nice place to be. You used to get free breakfast, free lunch, free coffee, free ice cream. Everyone put on like 10 pounds the first week that they start working at the studio. But that was a fond sort of memory. But really getting the opportunity to direct, I used to say before I started in animation, I once had a summer job driving a delivery van for a wine merchant. That was the best job I ever had, because I had a free van and I was 19 years old and I could fit all my mates in the back of it. That was the best job I ever had until I got to direct. And directing is just pulling everything else I've ever been working on and learned together, and so I'd say the last 5 years getting a chance to direct these two movies has been, an absolute pleasure.
How did that opportunity come to you to actually get the opportunity to direct the Loud House movie?
Well, that's it. A friend said you don't ask to direct a movie, you are asked to direct a movie, which implies, there's got to be someone else there, right? So
Right.
the producer on Boss Baby was a lady called Ramsey Nato, and in I think 2019 she went to Nickelodeon to run the studio, and she obviously knew me from DreamWorks, and she got in touch and she was like, I want you at the studio. And so I went over to meet with her and the team, and she offered me to direct the Loud House movie. So I'd always wanted to direct, and so I made the move over to Nickelodeon.
That's awesome. For a lot of you for everyone that doesn't know, Dave and I are friends. Our daughters are very close in school. And one of our favorite movies that Charlie and I would watch is Boss Baby. And what did you do on Boss Baby? Like what animation did you do? I'm just curious.
I was a story artist. So the script, we got, the first draft of the script, and it was just a great script from the start.
Yeah.
And I shared an office with another board artist called Rad Seacrest, and we just spent all day drawing and laughing. And actually, to start with, I shared an office with this guy Sean Charmatz, and I just pitched every time I got something, he'd come over and take a look at it. And Sean's just really funny, just really talented, and he'd give me notes, and then I'd look at what he was doing. He was working on Trolls at the time, and I'd give him notes, and so we'd really just like push each other and plus each other's work,
Yeah.
So that's there's some good memories from Boss Baby. But what I ended up doing, I think I drew about a quarter of the movie. So I was recently, it was on just on TV, and the girls were watching it, and I started, saying the lines before the characters, and they said, how do you know all these lines? And I was like, I drew basically drew all of this.
That is crazy. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, there was one sequence that I storyboarded for the movie, which was not used in Boss Baby, and it was Boss Baby's kind of put in daycare, and he's got to escape. And there's a character who's like Spider-Man but uses glue, and he just covers himself with glue, and he can kind of climb walls and stuff.
Yeah.
And it got cut from the movie. And then when they were making Boss Baby 2, I wasn't at DreamWorks anymore. And I heard from their editor that they were using that scene in Boss Baby 2. And then I got a call from the director, Tom, and he goes, "Hey, we want to use your voice for Glue Baby in Boss Baby 2. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do that. It's amazing." And I said, "What do you need? Do you need me to come into the studio and record?" He's like, "No, we got it all 5 years ago when we did the first one." So I got a credit on Boss Baby 2 without working on it for a single second.
Wow. I gotta go back and look. Good gosh.
Man.
Yeah, I'm Glue Baby. And
Glue Baby. I gotta tell Charlie. Okay. Cool. That is awesome. I love that movie. I mean, Charlie and I have watched that for years and years, and we still do.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. And, when you're storyboarding, the characters sort of come to life. You've got to think about what's making you laugh and what's funny in the scene. And so some of it, I ended up writing certain lines in that movie that stuck, and that's what you do as a board artist. You kind of like take the script, and sometimes you use it exactly, and sometimes like without changing the input, the meaning of it, you might approach it in a slightly different way. And if it lands, if it lands in your pitch, then it can often find its way into the movie.
Did you do the whole Elvis scene in the airport?
I did them getting ready. I didn't do the Elvis scene. I think that was Glenn Harmon, I think, did all the airport stuff. But I had them getting ready with like getting all the hair gel and stuff. And I had a fart joke with baby powder.
Yes. Oh my God. That's when we watch all of it with the cologne. And then he does baby powder. And oh my God. Yeah. Charlie used to make me rewind that over and over and over again.
Yeah, that was me.
Come on, Josh. You were rewinding it for you. So you can
What do you think? Eric, have you seen it?
Yes, it was a while ago, but after hearing that, Dave, you're going to fit right in here. I'm so glad that you really fit the mold of the show that we're trying to put out here.
You fit the mold.
No, that's great. Those movies are fantastic too. And Dave, it's just cool, like looking at your resume, because you went from like Nickelodeon to DreamWorks to all sorts of fun places for animation. Is there one that you particularly felt like you felt the most comfortable, where you could kind of get away with, the way you wanted to do things? Was there a studio in particular you felt that way, or are they all kind of like, sky's the limit? We can kind of go for it, but here's the way we'd like to see things kind of play out.
They're all pretty cool in their own ways. The Nickelodeon's a great studio, and it's got a lot of history to it, and they have like an archive of artwork and stuff. And DreamWorks feels like a family, because it felt like they looked after you. There was even a doctor on site.
Really?
So if you were sick, you just like go see the doctor. I think the idea was so you never had to leave the campus, which made you just work more. But you go outside and there's people doing yoga by the fountain, and later on by about 4:30, there's always a party. So you see someone walking by with a Modelo, and you're like, I wonder what's going on. So they're fun, and I loved working at Warner Brothers because it's an amazing lot. I was there making Smallfoot, and we used to play a game at lunchtime called Open That Door, where you just walk past the soundstage and just open the door, and if it opens, you just walk in. And so you'd end up on the set of like Supergirl, in her apartment in New York or something like that, or in her cave. Like they were filming that at the time, and we'd just end up in there, and we got to like make some friends with some of the people that worked on some of those shows just by wandering around. And what were they making? They were making Dunkirk while we were there. And we watched.
Wow.
Big stage. I think it's stage 16. We watched them remove the floor, and it revealed this like 3-story deep trench. And then they built a ship cut in half on a gimbal and lowered it into the trench, and then they filled it with water. So we were like watching this. It took months. And one day someone said, there's a load of extras, like there's a load of wounded airmen and nurses today. So they're obviously filming. So we're like, right, let's open that door. And we kind of snuck in to stage 16, and all these black curtains are hanging from the ceiling. And immediately a security guard spots us, and we're like, oh. And he looks at us and goes, "You'll get a better view if you go down there." And like everyone's in wetsuits in the water, the cameraman and the director, everyone's in the water, and we're just like,
That is so cool.
yeah.
That must have been a trip. That's a great
Wasn't
story.
that Christopher Nolan's movie, Bob?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of your favorites.
These places are all fun, and the thing is, the people move around a lot. So you might have a crew of people and they might make a movie, but when it finishes, they don't always stay at the studio. So whichever job you have, you end up getting to know people. You'll work with them 2 or 3 times, even if it's at different studios.
Nice.
Can we get you to do a live action Thundercats movie?
For sure.
So it's a question, Dave. You mentioned like on Boss Baby and some of these other projects, how you drew all of these sets of scenes and everything. How accurate to your drawings were the final versions of it? Well, like, are they pretty close to what you drew, or do you see there's a lot of changes and variations from what you initially drew?
It depends on the director and what the scene is. So on Boss Baby, they're pretty close. The shots are pretty close. But sometimes what you do in storyboards then gets moved forward into layout, and layout is adding the camera and on the real set. And every step of the way in animation, people are looking to plus it. So if it's an action sequence and you suddenly have cameras and things that you can move, you can add more dynamism maybe than you would do in the storyboards. But that said, some storyboard artists can draw action scenes like you wouldn't believe. Like getting that right is like a magic trick. My strength is more comedic stuff, but there's people who awesome action things, and I think board artists are just a great talented group of people. I don't know if I always used to think that they were the people to aspire to be, but when you're at the studio, there's animation departments, there's all these departments that are all talented people, and I used to think that story artists were like rare race horses, that it's like having just a special group of people together.
That's awesome.
Now, another question I had, you mentioned how you made the transition to directing. How difficult of a transition was that to go from being a storyboard artist to actually becoming the director on the project?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, storyboarding to start with is like being the director, because you've just got a blank piece of paper and you've got to decide, where am I putting the camera? How far out is, where does the characters come in from? Where do I cut? You make all these choices. I was once told by a director friend of mine, when I was an art director, he said, if you ever want to direct, you're going to have to learn how to storyboard. And that took me all the way back to drawing comics, because comics are a little bit like storyboarding, a little bit. And storyboarding is just a lot of choices. It's like a puzzle. You got to solve like when to do everything and how to put it all together. So I think once you come from story and luckily I'd had experience in art departments and stuff as well. So when you're directing, you've got to talk to all of these departments. And I think the fact that I'd done some of these roles before made me think, what would I be asking if I was in their position? So okay. I think just taking all the steps that I had made by the time you get to directing, it was like the next logical step, if you know what I mean. So it didn't feel super intimidating. Also, I think The Loud House, the budget for that movie might have been about, I'm guessing here because they never actually told me, but about $12 million or something. And it did so well for a movie that didn't cost a huge amount of money. But I always think, if you get given $100 million, probably you've got a bit more pressure than on a $12 million movie, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then Plankton, the budget for Plankton, again, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but my guess would be high 20s to low 30 million budget for that. So definitely a bigger budget than the Loud House movie. But again, it's not like a Disney or Pixar movie where the budget could be 150 million. But Plankton's a special project because it was my first chance to sort of work with the SpongeBob folks and play in that universe. And I, like I mentioned before, coming from Ren and Stimpy, kind of the SpongeBob is a logical step or two along from Ren and Stimpy, I think. So it's just a privilege to get to play in that world.
How long
just
ago? Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to ask is just a quick follow-up to that, because you mentioned the pressure was something like the budget. So what's the pressure like going into an established franchise like SpongeBob or in this case, or Loud House? Well, actually, SpongeBob would probably be a bigger franchise. So going into a franchise like that, what type of pressure do you feel coming into somebody else's world? Because like you said, now you get to play in it. So what type of pressure do you have going into that?
Oh, it's definitely pressure. I mean, you want to just do a great job, and you want to like add to the legacy of those characters. And I was a huge fan of the first SpongeBob movie, which was directed by Steven Hillenburg, who created the character. And you have a lot of people around you. We had SpongeBob has two custodians at the studio, Mark and Vince, and they're across every SpongeBob sort of property. So they were the exec producers on the movie. And they'd have regular check-ins. And our writer, we had two writers, Doug Lawrence, who created. Actually, I think Steve Hillenburg created Plankton, but Doug has played him from the very beginning. So he was one of the writers, and I think that is a big thing because this is a story he's wanted to tell for like 20 or 25 years or something. And Kaz was the other writer, and he's been a longtime SpongeBob guy. He comes from like New York comics, underground comics, and stuff. So they're interesting people, and when I first was going to be working with them, I think the studio did build it up a bit like, what's it going to be like when you meet with them, and is it going to be okay? And I felt a bit like, I don't know, zookeeper going into a cage full of gorillas. They might just rip your arms off or something. But they're really great people. They're really great story people. They're funny. And I think after when you're making a movie, you have screenings every maybe 3 months or so. So once we'd had a couple of good screenings, they start to trust you. They start to say, okay, I can see what you're doing. I can see the story you're trying to tell. And sure, they'll have notes, they'll have ideas and thoughts that they want to, convey over to you. But that's it. It was just earning their trust, I think, was an important.
How long ago did they pitch this movie idea to you to direct it?
Wow. I think it was before COVID. I was at the studio at Nickelodeon. And I was making the Loud House movie. I was probably in like 9 or 10 months into that.
Yeah.
And they approached me with a few movies that they had on the slate. And Plankton was one of them. I don't exactly remember all the others, but I just immediately zeroed in on it because I love villains and I love SpongeBob. And I just thought this is funny. We can do something a little bit different, right? So when I first talked about it, I said, well, a SpongeBob movie, right? It's what that is. It's sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, and it's right here. But what I want with Plankton is to be just over here, and a little bit weirder, and a little bit darker, and so you get to change the tone just a little bit because it's a Plankton movie and not a straightforward SpongeBob movie.
Very cool. Why don't we? Do you want to watch the trailer since it came out, and then we can kind of continue the conversation, break the trailer down, have Dave talk about it?
Sounds good. Yeah, I got one special Easter egg for Josh when we finish the trailer.
Oh God. All right.
Here we go.
You guys see it?
Yep.
All right, let me go ahead and hit this.
Welcome to Bikini Bottom at the bottom of the ocean.
All right, hold it right there. This is the beginning of my movie. Ever since I was a little boy, I've always dreamed of taking over the world. We will destroy you all.
Little harsh.
Who cares? Just watch.
Your idea hasn't worked for 25 years. I thought we were partners in crime. Are you even listening to me?
Of course I'm listening. I'd love some coffee.
You're such a jerk!
A few moments later.
Plankton! I'm gonna do what you could never do. World domination!
World domination? That's my thing!
Which hemisphere should we invade first?
Plankton! It is your fault Karen turned into a monster!
Let's get you two back together.
And I mean to help me understand Karen and our relationship.
And save Bikini Bottom.
already faced death once today. Bring it on. Let's roll! Good luck, Green Jelly Bean Man! Karen, I love you!
Destroy them all!
Oh, she remembered my catchphrase. Don't touch anything without asking me first.
Yes, sir. Hey, Plankton, can I touch this? Sorry, Plankton, I have to touch this. Woo! How about if I touch this one just with my pinky?
That's carbonated.
Handsome gas.
Josh,
Yes,
handsome gas.
that's you. So you had that. That's awesome. Very cool.
I'm handsome Plankton and I'm glue baby.
That is
Nice.
awesome.
IMDb is looking awesome.
Those are timeless already. So
I
good
love
on you, sir.
Now,
Yeah,
will
that's
there be
great.
another trailer coming up here in the next week, or that's the big one, and then you're going right into March 7th?
Well, I think on Friday there's going to be some kind of update. Netflix got on a call with us a few weeks ago to talk about what they were doing in the rollout. And from Friday, there's digital billboards, Times Square and Sunset Boulevard, and it's going to be, I think they've got a 30-second cut down version of that trailer that they put on that's going to be on those things. So when they do that, I wouldn't be surprised if it also gets released as a second trailer.
Very cool. And have people already started to review that? Like, have you gotten reviews about the movie so far, or is that too early?
Well, I don't know if you know this, but the movie leaked.
Really?
6 months ago. Yeah, and the previous SpongeBob movie leaked as well about a year
How
earlier.
is that possible? I don't
know. I got taught. I heard about it, and I think it was the studio that does the dubbing and the subtitles. The leak came from there, and
wow.
So it's obviously it bums you out when you hear that, right? And
Bob and I were just talking about that today about movies.
So, but then the next thing that happened, because bear in mind, I finished this movie, I think in June last year.
I remember, yeah.
And because they had sandy cheeks, they don't want to put two SpongeBob movies out too close to each other. So we were waiting to find out when it was going to be released. But yeah, this leak happened, and the surprising sort of silver lining to it all was people watched it and people started reviewing it, and they loved it. It got. I hope they still like it when it comes out for real. But on the people on Reddit love it.
That's awesome.
Well, I will say this about that trailer. There's a lot of cool things there in that trailer. A lot of little things there. Like, for example, you see SpongeBob talking to Plankton, and he's got that little suitcase that says junior psychiatrist kid. It's a lot of little humorous stuff throughout the trailer. As a lot of this stuff that's humor, was this stuff that got added in during the directing process? Is it because you said you specialize a lot in humor with that, or is this stuff that was already written on the pages? I mean, how did a lot of this stuff come up?
Every which way. I mean, the joke can be on the page sometimes, or the board artist might come up with a joke. The way we roughly did it, I assembled a board team that was a mix of TV and feature background people. And they were all over the planet as well. We had someone in New Zealand, we had someone in Germany, we had someone in the UK, we had people in California. And my goal was to start with was to tell the story and make sure the story makes sense, right? So don't worry about it being funny first, worry about the story first. And then, as we approach launching things into layout, I had about 2 or 3 veteran SpongeBob board artists, and my head of story was a veteran SpongeBob artist as well. So sometimes the story works, but the characters don't feel quite on point yet. And so we do a final pass with these SpongeBob board artists where they'd kind of just make it feel more authentically SpongeBob in 1 or 2 cases. So that's where a lot of the humor comes from right at the end. Without giving too many things away, there's some acting from SpongeBob where he starts drinking coffee that is amazing. And there's Plankton gets to learn a bit of empathy in this movie for a moment, and it's Plankton out of character. So these things are just fun to play with,
I have a question, actually an interesting one. So you're doing this movie about the villain, about Plankton. How do SpongeBob is such a well-known character. I mean, I don't know when, you guys know when SpongeBob first came out?
99, wasn't it?
Yeah, way back.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
the 25-year anniversary a few months ago.
okay, because I know it wasn't around when we were kids. But
Yeah, I know it came out after Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
I know that.
That's right.
So, SpongeBob is in the trailer, and has a presence in there. How, as a director, do you make sure that SpongeBob isn't used too much and that we get Plankton, since it is a Plankton movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's an odd couple. Putting the two of them together kind of just works because one of them's evil and one of them's the most joyous character in the world. But it's Plankton's movie. He's the one that gets presented with the choices, so he's the one story-wise propelling things forward. And, again, without giving too much of it away, he is, at a certain point, I realized something about the movie, which was that everything that goes wrong in the movie, which is a lot, has to be Plankton's fault. So then,
that's good. Yeah.
SpongeBob doesn't notice that to start with, but at a certain point, he realizes Plankton's been gaslighting him. So you get to give some real moments in the movie. Maybe in the TV show, you might kind of like cover over those with gags and stuff, but we let some moments play out a little bit more real. And that's when you give Plankton those kind of choices. And I don't know if you know this about it, but the movie's also a musical. And so there's just some 5 or 6 really great songs in the movie. And we've got like Brett McKenzie, who won an Oscar for A Man or a Muppet, the Muppet movie. And he did 2 or 3 songs. And Linda Perry from Four Non Blondes, and Mark and Bob Mothersbaugh of Devo. And
all out.
These they all help progress the story, because I just think about story first, right? And it's one of these sort of mottos. I guess it's a bit of a Pixar thing, like story is king, and I'm definitely a big believer in that. But when you work on something like SpongeBob, you realize, story's king, but without great characters, it doesn't matter. And SpongeBob and these guys are just great characters, So you've got both. You've got to play with both. But it's Plankton's movie. It's lensed through his point of view. He gets to make all the big decisions. And again, without giving things away, does he get the secret formula? And and what happens with him and Karen? You can see from the trailer that there's a falling out.
Right.
She's going to take over the world. And the thing is, she's capable. She could actually do it. He's been holding her back for 25 years. So she could pull this off.
How much room do they give you to play with these characters? Because again, this is an established franchise. The movie's going to become canon to the SpongeBob characters. So, at what point does the studio say, you know what? No. We need to make sure that you do this, this, and this. But or do they give you plenty of leeway to say, okay, just make sure you include this, but go ahead and have some fun?
It's more that they want. I think it's important for everyone to have fun. I think if you're having fun, it shows in the work that you do. The studio, there's 3 sort of parts to it. There's the SpongeBob people, there's the Netflix executives, and there's Nickelodeon executives. And so you're going to get notes from different sources, and they might not all be saying the same thing. But the SpongeBob custodians, they know these characters better than anyone, and sometimes things would come up, like the studio might say something like, well, I don't know, should he call her his computer wife? And the answer to that from the SpongeBob side was, he's called her his computer wife for 25 years. So, that's just canon now.
Right.
But they what am I trying to say? I think Doug's writing it with Kaz, so you've got the SpongeBob people involved in the inception of it.
Okay.
And everyone's got eyes on it. Every time you have a screening, which is every 3 months or so, you invite everyone along. Everyone sees what's working and what isn't working. And it's a great time to get everyone together and go, okay, so we could all see that the ending doesn't work, for example. So we've got to, what ideas have we got for that? And then you just can focus your fire on certain things. But you know, when we screened this movie at Nickelodeon, I think it was back in September, and Doug hadn't seen it finished, and he's the character, and he was so. And one of the things I wanted to do is make Doug happy, right? Because this is the movie he's wanted to make for 25.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So Doug, he just grinning from ear to ear, and he kissed me on the cheek. So I'm like, okay,
That's good.
Made Doug happy. That's half the battle, I think. You know?
Yeah. Is there anything you would say that was left on the cutting room floor that, looking back, you're like, why did we cut it out? Or are you happy with?
Oh, overall, I'm really happy with it. There's one shot of Patrick right at the end. We were told you've got to get it exactly 78 minutes, and we had to cut a few frames here and there. And there was one shot where I just want to drink in that image of Patrick right at the end of the movie, and I can't again give it away. But I'm like, can we just hold on that glorious image for more time? And it was like, sorry, it's got to be exactly 78 minutes. Like, oh, that's a shame.
That's funny.
How did the partnership with Netflix come about? Because that's pretty dynamic bond there between Nickelodeon and Netflix. So,
well, that's going back to 2019 when I moved to Nickelodeon to make the Loud House movie. Loud House movie also came out on Netflix, and prior, I think, to Ramsey's arrival at the studio, and prior indeed to Paramount Plus being a thing, the deal had already been done with Netflix to make 5 movies for them. And so I think it was Loud House movie, Casagrande's movie, there was a Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and then the Sandy Cheeks movie, and now and Plankton. So it takes 3 years to make an animated feature, roughly. And so when that deal was made, going back, it's probably 7 or 8 years ago that deal was made, and this is the final of the 5 movies that completes the deal with Netflix.
Nice.
But I think if they did it now, it would be going on Paramount Plus, or I'd be pushing for it to be a theatrical release.
Yeah,
we're big believers in going to the theater here too. But there's certainly nothing wrong with Netflix, of course. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Was there ever talk of making it a theatrical release?
No, not this one. It was already a done deal with Netflix. So yeah, not for this one.
Now you mentioned that that one of these films roughly takes about 3.5 years to make it. Now, how much of that time does it take the cast when they come in to actually record their parts?
Oh, they're like a well-oiled machine. So by the time, what we normally do is we record scratch, right? So that's normally the story artists or me or the editor standing in for the real actor. And it's just to get the rough time and get the rough shape of it. And then, it's all budgetary as well. Like we might have 12 records with Doug over the course of 2 years. So when you've got it working rough in scratch, that's when you book the first round of records and you start to get the real cast plugged in. And that always, elevates it. It's if it's working, that's great. But once you get the real voices plugged in, it just takes it up a level. Tom Kenny is the guy that plays SpongeBob. And one of the other things he does is he's also the voice director for everything SpongeBob. Okay. So he's there. He does it all for the show, and we book in, us our time with him, and it's different. Often the director will be the one to direct the voice. And both on Loud House movie, which has got such a large cast, because it's Lincoln and 10 sisters, they have a voice director that works on the show. And when I was working on that movie, I went to sit in on one of the recordings for an episode. And I just thought, when I was watching the episode, I had certain thoughts or notes in my head. And then she just verbalized them almost exactly. And 9 times out of 10, whatever I was thinking, the voice director had given the same note. So that made you think, well, okay, that's great. All I need to do now is whisper in their ear. I did this with Tom. It's like Tom knows what he's doing with the characters. He can even read them in as any other character because he can imitate all the other characters in the cast, So it becomes just a fun thing, and they want to ad-lib things. And sometimes you're like, that's great, but can we also get it like this? Because I need it, I need a version where we've got it whispered or, whatever particular direction you may need. but yeah, those guys are fast. You know, you might have a large chunk of script to get through, and they can pretty much rip through it because they've been doing these voices for so long. What was a little different was Doug and Jill Talley, who plays Karen, because it's a musical, they've got some songs to sing, and they're not used to singing songs. So that was the more tricky one. But Linda Perry we were recording at her studio in Studio City somewhere, and she put them at ease. You know, she's a huge SpongeBob fan as well. You know, she has a son, and they watch SpongeBob together, and it's almost intimidating because she seems to know more about SpongeBob episodes than even the custodian. She's like, well, she'll know what episode a certain joke was, and you're like, okay, wow, she knows this show pretty well. So, you know, for her, it was great to work with Doug and Jill and encourage them for these, you know, performances, which isn't their natural thing, and they both did, you know, such a fantastic job on it. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. So you and I have talked earlier about trying to stay true to the source material. And I can imagine as the director of this, you probably had leeway because they had never done a Plankton movie. So you were able to, like you said, kind of go to like the darker side versus if they had you do a SpongeBob movie. Do you think it would have been more nerve-wracking to you to like have to stay true to the source material? Because, you know, Derek, Bobby, and I are talking weekly about how you have all these movies that come out and you have the directors say, oh, I'm a big fan of this movie. I've been a fan since I was a little boy. And then they come in and change everything. And you're like, why are you not staying, you know, close to the source material?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. I mean, I think what I was thinking is in animation, you almost don't have that ego. You don't want to kind of go, I'm this style of director, because you want the characters to be the stars, right? And I was sort of jokingly said, can you imagine if Quentin Tarantino directed a SpongeBob movie?
I'd go watch that.
I would watch that. Yeah,
it would be a must watch.
But it wouldn't be very normal. It wouldn't be a normal.
Oh, not at all.
So as animators, you kind of tend to not be as forward as that, I guess. Your style, I want to promote what was great about the characters and the show in the first place, and plus it from there, if you know what I mean. And when I watched SpongeBob, you know, the funny thing is, like I said, I've never worked on it before, but I've got all these friends that worked on it. And my friend Aaron and my friend Kent, both season 1 story artists, they come up with some of the funniest gags. You know, the imagination thing is a Kent, and it's just Kent did about 5 drawings of SpongeBob in a box with a rainbow and turned it into an 11-minute episode. And when you hang out with those guys, it's a bit like hanging out with a version of SpongeBob, which tends to lead you into trouble, you know. But it was nice to finally get a chance to play in that world, and I'm not trying to impose myself on it, but I do like to bring things that I love into it. And you saw it a little bit in the trailer there. There was a black and white scene, just one shot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the ideas, you know, Doug writing it, he wanted to check in with Plankton flashbacks throughout his life. And when I thought about it, I thought, well, the further we go back in time, see him as a little kid or whatever, maybe the further we go back in style of animation. So when we see Plankton as a kid, it's rubber hose animation, and when we see him college, it looks like the 1970s. You know, we've got some Transformers style animation in here as well. So we were just like checking in on some of these like iconic animation styles, and that's not necessarily canon, but SpongeBob's pretty playful. You know, they do stop motion stuff in SpongeBob. You can cut to a dead fish, and that's fine in SpongeBob. So they don't mind breaking some rules and having fun, and I think it's nice to try and embrace that. You know?
Got it.
And in terms of the voice actors, was this pretty much the original cast from 25 years ago? Is it all really the same folks?
100%.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Awesome.
That's cool.
And what's his name's in it though? Bob. What's his name? The one who played Dauber in Coach?
Oh, I can't. Shoot.
What character does he play?
Bill Fagerback. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's the one who voices Patrick.
Yeah. He's totally in it. Patrick's the entire movie eating in this movie.
That's awesome. We love the actor who played Patrick because he was in.
Yeah, he used to play in this sitcom called Coach, and we used to love that.
Oh yeah, no, they're just funny people. You know, it was like perfect alchemy when they got that cast and that show together 25 years ago, and luckily that cast has stayed together. And I don't think they've added to it one or two characters like the gal pals and stuff like that, but yeah, it's still the original actors.
Are they still doing new episodes on Nickelodeon?
Yeah, all the time. And the spin-off shows, yeah, they're busy.
Good work.
Now, what is your your experience been like with the fan base since you got this movie? Has you had any sort of interactions with the fan base? Have they been positive? If so, well, what's that been like?
So far, not really, because the movie only just got announced and you know, not that long ago, right? So, and there's not much direct interface between me and fans at this point. But going back to that whole Reddit and the leak, that's when you were reading things where it was like, oh, that's how to do a SpongeBob movie, you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, it's nice to hear nice things for sure. But I haven't really. Maybe that'll happen once the movie comes out. You get, you know, if you post things on social media and stuff, then you definitely get interactions with people, which happened on the Loud House movie and stuff like that. But it's just been a little bit flying below radar just so far.
Okay.
Got it.
And I did want to ask you, you know, because I was just thinking about just, you know, the history of getting animation, Dave. And, you know, just thinking back to the time when, you know, it was 2020, we all remember the days where everything just, you know, completely shut down.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, you know, with a guy like yourself, and maybe I'm wrong on this, is why I'm asking, but in a world of animation, you may have been able to dodge something like that, because it didn't seem like that would be something that would totally put a halt on things. You know, things could keep going, I think, in theory. But I'm curious to, you know, hear from, you know, obviously a source here and how that worked out.
Well, yeah, that's true. I think most artists have a similar setup at home to what they might have at the studio in terms of a computer. I have a Cintiq, which is this big drawing tablet that's right in front of me below this screen that you can draw straight into Photoshop and stuff. And I think a lot of artists have that sort of setup at home. So all we needed to do is to work out how to use Zoom. And it was like kind
you weren't alone there.
Yeah. But it didn't affect the industry as much as it obviously did live action or anything like that, because we could work remotely and it didn't disrupt things too badly. I was making the Loud House movie. I was a year into it when, you know, we were all sent to work from home. And so I did about half the movie from home. But by then it was kind of figured out. We'd figured it out and we were on a path. And I think the more difficult thing was the animation studio for that movie was in the Philippines, and they had different lockdown laws to the States. And so some people were locked in the studio in the center of the city, and some people were not allowed to drive into the city. So that definitely disrupted things a little bit more on the animation side. But in terms of the people working directly for Nickelodeon, it just became second nature, just like it has done now. Like, no matter which studio you're at, most of your meetings, even if you go in to the studio, you'll still be on a Zoom call about half the time. And so sometimes it is nice to be in person and you know, be around your work colleagues. So we try and find some time, especially to work in editorial. We'd go in to Nickelodeon, and maybe 10 of us might all be there in person to watch something or give notes on something or whatever it was. But that's never quite come back in that 5 years since lockdown started. I don't think most studios have, you know, full time. Everyone's back at their desks, but it hasn't made a huge difference in a way. And you know, the funny thing is, I was on a plane on a flight recently, and I was, you know, on the back of everyone's seats, people are watching movies and stuff, and I just looked around, And I thought like more than half the plane were watching animated films, and they weren't all kids, you know. So there's a huge market for this thing, and our industry, unfortunately, the last year or two has been in a bit of a slump. A lot of people have been out of work, and it's definitely been a more difficult time. So everyone's just, you know, hanging on and hoping that the industry comes roaring back, because there's definitely an appetite for it.
I mean, there's still animated shows we all watch that, you know, we love. I actually just started watching the new Spider-Man animated show that
That's meant to be really good. Yeah, like 90s style, is it?
it's yeah, I think so. And you know, there's some things that I took me a while to get into with it, but actually the writing is pretty good. I'm only on like the 4th episode, but you know, it's not bad. But I mean, we all loved the original Batman the animated series back in the early 90s. That was just so well done and was absolutely amazing. And then of course, you know, growing up in the 80s with He-Man and Thundercats and all that. So, you know, I mean, I still, you know, from time to time will watch some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nostalgia for that stuff. You know, people, when they become parents, they like to share things from their childhood, and so that means a lot of times it's animation. And so, you know, I think the first Disney movie, Snow White, was that 1929 or something.
39, I think. Maybe.
I think it's the
20. It might be 29.
I think it actually might be that.
And it's probably now the most still watched movie from the 1920s.
Oh yeah, we've watched it. Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, I'm looking it up. 1937.
Oh, 1930.
Okay, so
37, man.
Yeah,
a long time.
Yeah. So people like to rewatch these things. They like to relive those childhood memories with their own kids. You know, so these things keep going. They have a life of their own after a while.
You're not wrong about that. I remember I sat my son down looking at some of the cartoons and stuff that he kind of liked, and I was like, nope, sit down here. Let me show you some proper cartoons.
No.
And he became an absolute fan of the Superman cartoons, the Batman, the animated series, all of that stuff. I mean, he just absolutely
stuff just rises to the top, and it's always going to be, you know, watched. I think. I grew up watching a lot of Chuck Jones and Tex Avery, sort of Warner Brothers cartoons, and the jokes are still second to none. You know, that sometimes people say, oh, it's cartoon logic. Kind of, I worry about that phrase sometimes. Like, what do you mean by that? Because cartoon logic is logic. It's what goes up must come down. And Chuck Jones is the master of that sort of thing, right? So the other thing is, a long time ago, I said I worked on Mr. Bean, and Mr. Bean is a character who doesn't talk, really.
Yeah.
And the genius of that is all the acting has to be in the character acting, and it means that you can license that movie, that series, to the whole world, because it doesn't have to be dubbed in any other languages. Everyone understands a visual joke. And that's kind of like the magic of animation. You don't need to speak a language, you know, it's sort of universal, and that's kind of quite special, I think.
And to go along with that too, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because they're actually still one of my favorite bands. But you got to work with the Gorillaz, which I gotta say, like, just in terms of music videos, I always kind of found them like, you know, just kind of like, what? But of course you watched them. We all did. But I always had a big appreciation for music videos that were like really like artistic and fun in their own ways. Like Peter Gabriel's music videos were always really cool.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, and then I saw that you did the Gorillaz, and I think that may be the coolest in terms of music videos ever. So really, I'm just giving you your flowers here. A round of applause, because that was just such awesome stuff.
It was a great time. I mean, the first gig I ever went to was Blur in 1991. So I was a big Blur fan anyway, right? And
wow, Blur.
The way I got into that, a friend of mine was an art director of a magazine, and he's like, look, I've got this secret project or something he told me and my friend Chris about. And he mentioned Jamie Hewlett, and we'd grown up on Tank Girl. We were big Jamie Hewlett fans. And he's like, well, what I'm doing is Jamie can't use a computer. This was like year 2000 maybe. So my friend was scanning his drawings, cleaning them up, and coloring them for him at night, probably all night. And he was like, Jamie needs some help. Do you reckon you can draw in his style? And me and my mate were like, Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. So we ended up just working directly for him in his studio, and down the hall, that was Damon Albarn's recording studio. So they were making the album as we were drawing stuff. We were mostly drawing stuff for the website, and the idea for the website was where the Gorillas live is this tower block that was actually a real building in West London, and they wanted the rooms designing and stuff. So we'd just come up with things like, how you might get a moose's head mounted on a wall in one room, and then you go through a door and you'd see the whole of the rest of the moose just stood in a corridor with its head through a wall. So we were just coming up with dumb stuff like that and drawing it in Jamie's style. He was right there, but half the lunchtimes we'd just play video games and Damon would come over and we'd start gambling on micro machines or something.
Oh,
that's
cool.
It was pretty great. I had a stack of sketchbooks, of Jamie's sketchbooks on my desk, and every page, they're just amazing drawings. He's just always been like a total master, really. And sometimes you can tell the drawing might have taken 10 seconds, but it's still just so much talent,
And that's the thing too, like their concerts are pretty much just shows like that. They're really awesome.
I went to their first gig. We got invited to their first ever gig somewhere in West London. People like Jude Law were there and stuff. It was crazy.
Oh man.
We were talking about, the Haunted Mansion at Disney, how they project the ghosts using the mirror.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we were when we were working on Gorillas, they were thinking about how they're going to do the stage show. And not that they did this straight away. They performed behind a curtain to start with, but we're like, you can use a projector and you can beam the character. If you animate them, you can beam that 40-foot high if you
That's crazy.
I think some gigs they eventually ended up doing a version of that. I think they ended up using that idea at some point.
That's super cool. That's great.
You mentioned how much you were excited about getting to play in the SpongeBob world. Are there any other franchises and stuff that if you could have an opportunity to play around in that you would want to?
Oh yeah, loads. I mean, come on. If you Star Wars or Batman or anything like that. You mentioned earlier, I'd almost forgotten I worked on Lego Batman because I and Lego is a great sort of franchise as well, even though they've not done anything with it in a while. But what I like, Lego Batman's in the first Lego movie, and he leaves with Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, if you remember in that film. That's when he leaves. Like an asshole. He's just gone, right? And so when I had to board me and another guy had to board basically the last third of the movie, because the movie made sense up to a certain point, and then it kind of didn't make sense. And so we were just in editorial going, okay, that makes sense, that doesn't. And we were there with the director just going, okay, any ideas? Go draw it. So we were just drawing stuff really fast. And at one point in the third act, Gotham is breaking in two, like splitting in half. And I had the best idea I've ever had, which I wasn't able to use, right? But the idea was Batman and a bunch of villains are building some kind of vehicle, and they're sort of working together. So building this vehicle, and they start building it, and then you cut away from it before you see what it is, and you cut to a shot of Gotham breaking in two, and the camera is really low, just above the water. And that Star Wars shot where the spaceship always comes flying over the top of the screen, massive?
Yeah.
So I do that. Something comes flying over the top of the screen, massive, and there's a big moon above Gotham. And as it comes past, you start to see what it is. It's the Millennium Falcon, but the Bat Millennium Falcon. With the Bat Millennium Falcon, that's the best idea I ever had. And it just like goes up in front of the moon. And I just had this whole thing of it just
awesome.
You cut inside into that cockpit, the iconic cockpit, and Batman's just there, and the other villains around me like, dude, seriously, I've always wanted one of these. And then he just punches it into light speed, and it goes from this part of the screen to this part, just. Then you do the Star Wars diagonal wipe, and the thing is coming down, and Batman runs down out of the Falcon, and he looks, and Gotham's splitting in two, and he looks one way, and this thing's opening up, and there's an orphanage just, and there's about to be kids falling into this horrible pit, and he's like, oh shit, and then he looks the other way, and the Millennium Falcon's teetering on the edge. He's like, He runs off to save the Millennium Falcon. Then you just keep the camera rolling. He runs back through shot to save the orphans. And I'm like, that's got to be in, right, guys? Come on. And they're like, nah, because between the first movie and the Lego Batman movie, Disney bought Star Wars, and we can't use the Millennium Falcon.
Of course. Of course.
They're like, what have you got that uses Daleks?
Once again, yep. Who played? I see his face, but I can't remember who played Batman.
Will Arnett.
Will Arnett. That's right. I saw his face.
He has the perfect Batman voice. It's spot on. It's exactly what it should be.
The funny thing, when I was working on Lego Batman, the editor was next door, and he plays stuff loud, so you can hear Will Arnett all day in one ear, right? And I was also watching BoJack Horseman, so I had headphones on. It's Will Arnett. Headphones off. Will Arnett. Everywhere, Will Arnett.
Buddy.
And those movies are really great too. Like the Lego movies really deserve a round of applause, just because they were kind of able to bridge parents and kids going to movies together. And the Batman one is by far and away my favorite. Again, Flowers, Dave.
That one's pretty good.
Yeah, it's so great.
Somewhere I found it the other day. They gave us minifigs to play with when we were boarding it. So I've got the Batman minifigure somewhere. And at the end of that movie, I've only seen the movie once, but we boarded it. And we boarded them having to, like, the city split apart, and these characters have to kind of do that and pull the city back together. And when I did that the first time, instead of, in the end, it's like 2 towers of minifigs that do this, and they kind of all pull it back together. But to start with, I just had them on one side, and they came down like that, which meant that the pivot point was in the middle. And we did it all with minifigs. We kind of had them all stuck together, and that meant that Batman crunched his abs really hard to pull the city back together. But it meant that he ended up, the shot, he was upside down in another character's crotch, celebrating. Logically, that's how it and then they're like, can't have that shot.
Oh my god.
Okay, well, what about
You're like, well, I tried.
good shot, man. A for effort.
It was probably a good call in the end, but it did make me laugh that that's just logically where Batman ends up in that version.
What was I going to ask? Oh, I want to ask about the animation on SpongeBob, because obviously it looks different than what originally, it was. How did you come about making those models? Like, what made you decide to? Because it almost kind of looks like Pixar a little bit.
Yeah, well, the first time anyone used CG models in SpongeBob was the second movie, Sponge Out of Water, and the guy that directed Trolls, Mike Mitchell, directed the live action and CG part of that film. And it's only about 20 minutes of the movie, even though it was like 80% of the trailer. It was definitely sold as a CG movie. But I thought that the characters of that first version were my favorite version of the CG versions of SpongeBob. And so when we were kind of looking at things, it's subtle stuff, but that was the version I was kind of like looking at the most. And I used to collect all these vinyl toys, like Hong Kong vinyl, by designers like Michael Lau and stuff. And the finish of those vinyl toys is something that felt quite similar in a way to the first time we saw the characters in CG in SpongeBob. So that's kind of what I was going for. But there's also budget-wise, the third SpongeBob movie, we could reuse some of the assets, some of the houses, some of the buildings, some of the ground planes and stuff. We could just give them to the animation studio and they could plug it right in. So sometimes it was a budgetary thing. Can you just reuse this set or aspects of this? And then other times with the main characters, we go in and we make sort of some subtle tweaks and things. That said, in this movie, I think we had about 4 or 5 animation studios, because we got 2D animation and we got that rubber hose black and white animation as well. So that one was animated by Macbeth and his studio in London. 2 of the other 2D sequences were animated in New Zealand. And we had 2 different CG animation studios as well. We had Redefine and Micros. So it's trying to keep all of that consistent. You know what I mean? It's that was one of the challenges for sure.
Very cool.
I was going to ask, You mentioned some of the earlier projects that you worked on. Growing up, what were some of the franchises or cartoon movies or films, series? What are some of those that influenced you, or that were some of your favorites that you're like, oh, you know what, that I like those ideas. I'd like to do something like that in the future. What inspired you, or what were your favorites?
I think when I was a little kid, it wasn't Disney's sort of golden age. We had things like the Aristocats and stuff like that. But I still loved the Fox and the Hound and those kind of movies. And those are the ones that I went to see when I was a little kid. And they were just amazing to me. And I think I was walking past a bookshop once and I saw an animation book for sale outside. It was on a table. And I've still got it. Like this is the whole Bible of animation. And I got this when I was like 7.
Oh my god!
And, wow. This is the thing that everyone still refers to. It's got all the movements, all the mouth charts, and so I didn't know anything about that. I just wanted this book, And then I guess you start copying that stuff, and as you get older, your tastes change. So somewhere in the middle, when you've got your VHS, I remember just recording a lot of Bugs Bunny and stuff like that whenever anything like that was on, so I could just watch it again and again. And then that happened with Ren and Stimpy. My friends just loved Ren and Stimpy, and it's so funny. Those drawings are so good as well. There's one of a baboon running, and it's four drawings of this baboon galloping. But we would go through it frame by frame with the pause button, just like, how did they do it? How is it done? And just trying to copy it, just trying to ape it, really. So yeah, it's been a lot of things over a lot of years, It definitely started with Disney features,
okay,
and then moved through sort of Tex Avery, Chuck Jones into Ren and Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy's still great.
It's still fantastic.
What about Ren and Stimpy?
Yeah,
if they brought it back, it'd play today. Absolutely, 100%. It would.
I think they had alchemy with the team that they had of those people as well, because I don't think anyone knew what they were really up to. Because they just made the weirdest stuff, but they made it so funny. And I just thought, I can't believe this. And around about the same time, then things like South Park are coming out as well. Not much later. Yeah. And that's a big influence as well. Not that it's the same as the sort of things that I've been working on. I've made too many sort of adult shows, but just anything that's really good. And with South Park, I think it's Cartman is always saying the comedy has to come from character and situation. There was a whole episode about Family Guy, and everyone's telling Cartman, you're going to love Family Guy. He's like, no, I hate Family Guy. Because it's just really Matt and Trey going, we fucking hate Family Guy, you know what I mean?
Oh, well played.
There's a lot to love. There's a lot of great animation. And at a certain point, when I moved to London and got to meet all these other people working in animation, I think it was only then that I sort of saw a Miyazaki film for the first time. And that's just like, oh wow, you can do that. So, and that's the thing, that those moments keep happening. I thought, like, when I saw Spider-Verse back in, 2018 or something?
Oh, fantastic.
And I was working on a film at Skydance, and we all went, Bill Damashki took the whole crew to watch Spider-Verse, and it was so good, and we came out of that going, we've got to up our game. We got to make our movie like that, better than that, But yeah, it's interesting because, like I said before, animation's kind of not a huge industry. So you end up knowing some of these people, like Alberto Miego was a huge part of why Spider-Verse is so the way it is, right? And he got a weird credit. I can't even remember what it was on the first movie, and he kind of disowned it for a while. But he won an Oscar for one of his short films a couple of years ago. And, things like Spider-Verse wouldn't be Spider-Verse without him, So you end up meeting people along the way, and there's some amazingly talented people, but it's like a big family, weirdly.
So cool.
Now, earlier you mentioned that not a lot of people or that it's a little tougher in the industry to get work nowadays.
Yeah.
What do you think the problems are in the industry that's causing that?
Well, it was just there was a big boom for a few years. Netflix coming on the scene and opening an animation studio, and a lot of other studios like DreamWorks are making content for Netflix, and that just kept going and going for a long time. So it was almost like full employment. I think, again, there was a joke on South Park or something where you just call and leave a message on the answering machine at Netflix and they greenlight your show. There was definitely a time where it was not like it is now. And so what I guess really happened with Netflix was, the stock price dropped at a certain point because they didn't add subscribers 1 month or something. And there was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to that, and they really cut back. And that affected, there was a knock-on effect through the whole industry for that. Then the writers' strike happened, and different things happened. And I think it's all compounded a little bit. But I do think I can see it starting to recover a bit now. Whereas, a year or two ago, there still probably is, but I can see this year being a bit of a turning point. I can see more projects getting greenlit and things coming back a little bit more. But it's hard to see it going back to where it was 4 or 5 years ago when Netflix was really in full swing.
I wanted to kind of ask a follow-up on that, and I kind of stumbled all over my question. You watch, it'll come to me at the end of this interview.
It'll come to him in the middle of the night. I'll get a text.
I'll be like, that's what I was going to ask. Oh, okay. I know what it's going to, because you mentioned the writer's strike. Did that have an impact on Plankton at all?
No, actually it didn't, because the writers on our show weren't under the same agreement.
Okay.
So they could actually, I think animation wasn't as directly affected like that, but the industry as a whole was. And because our project, the script was kind of basically written, I think, by the time the writers' strike started as well. But Kaz was able to continue working, which is good, because I think they had him writing 3 movies at the same time. So,
Excuse me.
Good stuff.
It's nuts. All right. Any other questions, guys? What do you think?
God, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, it's such a good interview. What do you have coming up on the horizon? Is there anything you would like to plug or talk about?
I've got this movie coming out next week.
Yes. Everybody should see it March 7th, please.
Which one?
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
It takes a while. But no, I'm hopefully moving to a new studio. I'm just talking in talks with some studios at the moment, and hopefully sorting that out in the coming weeks. But right now, I'm just focused on Plankton coming out next week, and it'd be nice to sort of have that closure in a way, because it's a strange thing. Normally, you finish a movie and it comes out a week or a month later. This one's in a sort of strange period of time when you finish the project and you almost start to forget about it. And then because it's coming out now, I've been doing lots of interviews and stuff the last few days. And it's like, oh yeah, this is great. This feels like there's momentum again, and that's nice. But it's, I'll just be glad when it's out there in the world.
We're looking forward to
it. Premiere?
Not an official one. I think we're going to go to the British pub next Friday and have the cast and crew.
That's how you do a premiere.
Yeah.
Well done. Nice.
That is so cool. I think you guys have any other questions for Mr. Dave?
Knowing me, like I said, I'll think of it when I'm
going to think of
I'll be like, oh my God, I should have asked him that.
I'm going to think of 12 more by the time we're done. I should have asked that. I know. We should let Dave know that he's always welcome back here, because I'm sure we can write all our follow-ups down. And with that
no, I see him all the time. So I'll say, you got to come back on.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
You got to come back on. Well, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts to come out and, plug Plankton and to tell us a little bit about your career. Very interesting, and can't wait to see what's on the horizon for you, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. No, thank you, man, for all the stuff. It's great. We're looking forward to seeing what's happening in the future too. So Dave, it's been a pleasure, man. Really has.
Oh, this was fun.
Good. All right. Bob, you look like you want to ask something.
No, I was just going to say, Dave, do you have any, besides the movie, any social media or anything like that you want to plug as well?
Yes.
Go that way.
I'm really bad at this. I'm on Instagram. I think my thing is Dave Needham 953, and I just started recording a few things for a YouTube channel, which was just my old storyboard pictures. So things from Penguins of Madagascar, scenes and things like that, things that never made it. One of my favorite characters that never got into existence, called Jimmy the Rat, I now pitched a cut sequence from movies, but I'm going to keep going and do that. So I guess that's just my name probably on YouTube. I haven't even checked what it is, but there's going to be things I keep uploading.
I just followed you on Instagram while we were on here, and you have some amazing stuff on there. You guys aren't on Instagram, but he's got.
Josh, make sure you get me the link to that, so that way I can put it with the other social media links.
Okay. Will do. But yeah, some amazing drawings you put on there. God, I wish I could draw like that.
That YouTube show that you got out there is available now, Dave, of all that stuff that,
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to look. It's probably open on a browser here. Dave Needham, for some reason, I'm the number 459. And
459.
But I just started recording these pictures. Basically, as a story artist, you draw all week and then you have to pitch in front of everyone probably every week or two. And it's a bit like if you're a musician, you practice all week and then you get to play live. So when you get, and I'm a little out of practice, but these are still okay. But when you're really good at it, it's like it's your chance to play live, and you're in control of the timing, and you're doing all the sound effects, and you're doing all the voices, So it's fun going back to those characters like Skipper, and doing Scratch. Because I'm British, I was asked to do private all the time, so I did be a confused penguin a lot. And then sometimes that script didn't make sense. You'd be like, I'm bored in this and I don't really understand what's happening. And every time I didn't understand what's happening, I'd have Private ask Skipper in the film and be like, Skipper, I don't know what's happening again. Skipper just slap him and be like, listen, soldier.
Well, I just found it on YouTube, so I'll make sure to put that in the
I'm
links.
looking right now.
I'm a total sucker for stuff like that, so I can't wait to watch that. That's gonna be
cool.
Yeah. All right. Any other social media, Dave?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Don't think so. All right. Josh, where can we catch you?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok and LinkedIn, which I've been spending a lot of time on lately. And I'm the family man of the Valley. I'm a realtor here in Southern California. Check me out.
Very good. Bob, you, sir.
You can find me on my YouTube channel at Bob Loves Movies. Hopefully, I'm hoping to get a review out for that new film coming out, Last Breath, that new one with Woody Harrelson. I'm hoping to go see it tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So hopefully I can get a review of that out within the next day or two. And then you can also find me on X and Criticless. And again, as always, like I said, we will have in the description below, I'll have the links to all of our social media.
I just sent you Dave's, Bob.
Perfect.
The Instagram.
All right. Well, as for me, huh?
No, I was just saying, all right. Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Well, hold on. Just to let you know, and not that it's of that importance, but I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. There's some animation on Facebook, not as much on LinkedIn. So don't you appreciate Dave's stuff elsewhere. You're not going to find it not much on LinkedIn. So
Derek will do a post on Facebook once a year for your birthday.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
pretty much. Thank you for the wishes. Talk to you later.
Thanks, guys, and then I'm on my way.
See you next year.
Yep. All right, gang. Well, Dave, once again, a pleasure, man. It's been awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good night. Signing off.
Oh, aren't you going to say next week's our 1 year anniversary?
Oh, yes.
Of That's Fun to Talk. It's going to be a big celebration.
We should have some fun. We're hoping next week for us to have a taste test of our favorite zero sugar drinks. That should be fun. Or zero sugar sodas specifically. And then we're looking at, hopefully we'll kind of look at some of our favorite scenes from over the past year on the show. And I'm sure something else will pop up during the week that we'll have to talk about. So
for sure.
We
All
will.
right. Well, good call. We'll catch everybody on the 1 year. I can't believe we've been doing this a year. Anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks again, gents. Signing off for the night. You guys have a good one.
You too, Derico.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
All right.